All right, guys, how goes it? So, after streaming 5 hours of Elden Ring today, doing some crazy challenge kills, uh, realized it is the 28th as of midnight, which it is a half hour past. And we still have some Jigsaw and Saw movies to get out there. So, let's talk Saw 4 from 2007, directed by Darren Lynn Bousman, who directed the last three films. And this film has the distinction of having the third film take place at the same time as this one. So we got both of the events in both films, three and four here, that are happening the exact same time and converge at the end. And I thought that was a really cool idea. And I know the reason behind it. Like, this is the first Saw movie that Whannell or James Wan didn't write at all for. So, and I can see where a lot of people, like, when I ask people if they like Saw, how they feel about this franchise, a lot of them say, I like up to three, and then I don't really care for them after that. I hear that a lot. Now, it makes sense because Winnell and Wan had really nothing to do with this except for being executive producers and creators of this whole series. So it does make sense, but to me, there's not. It's you're not missing Winnell or Wan. Like, there's most of James Wan's stuff. You could feel when he's all over the movie, directing it, writing it, like the first two Conjurings. Then you can watch The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, and you can see that James Wan wasn't directing. Like, you can feel his presence missing. For the Saw franchise, it's just not like that for me. Like, I definitely will say, not this one, but the next movie, 5, Saw 5 is the weakest out of the whole franchise. For me. Except for Spiral. But I don't really consider that part of the main 8, like counting Jigsaw. I know it's still set in the same universe, but it's a little too different for me to consider it part of the main story, even though it technically kind of is. I don't know, it's weird. We'll talk about that when we get to Jigsaw. Well, probably Jigsaw and Spiral will probably be on the same day. Probably the 31st of the month. Well, I did last month, right? What was last month? Yes, I got my theme finished last month. So now let's see if we can do it again for a second month in a row. So Saw 4, almost said 5. Saw 4, 2007. Let's watch and talk about it. Well, we're in the morgue, and we get a nice opening shot, far away, but still, of Jon Kramer's penis. Now, we saw some brain surgery in the last movie, in 3, with, Lynn doing the whole procedure on the square section of his brain so it wouldn't be pushing against his skull. The beginning here in the morgue with the whole autopsy and peeling the skin over the face and then taking the brain out with the bone saw, cutting around, and then pulling the actual brain out with the sack over it. It looks so good. It looks so realistic. Like, one of the most realistic looking autopsies in a movie that I can think of. It looks really, really good. It's gross as shit, like, for people who can't take seeing that type of stuff. And I'm probably one of those people. Like, I'm such a big gore hound, I say all the time, in movies. Movies. But if I had to see something like this in front of me, I'd probably be throwing up. Like, I can't deal with this type of shit, like, in person. Excuse me. But it looks great here. And then, like, they cut him down here and they pull the skin on his chest apart. And the whole autopsy just looks absolutely amazing in this. Now, this is the movie that basically really introduces Detective Hoffman. He was in the last one, but very, very little. I consider parts 4 through 7 Hoffman's story. like Hoffman's chapter, and 1 through 3, Jon and Amanda's chapter. So I've said it before. I know a lot of people who don't like Detective Hoffman as a character. I absolutely love him. I think he is such a great antagonist and secondary antagonist to Jon. But I mean, as for this movie, well, the last movie, but from the very beginning of this movie, Jon's dead. So, aside from flashbacks, he's gone. So all we have, and Amanda's dead at the end of this movie. This timeline gets confusing, guys. Like, it does. That's why, even though how much I love this series and how many times I've seen most of these movies, I still don't remember a decent amount of little details and stuff like that. But as of the end of this movie and Saw 3, as they take place together at the same time, Amanda's dead also. So all we have is Hoffman as the basically, and Dr. Gordon, which we don't find out about that until the 7th movie. So basically, our pure and only antagonist, aside from Jon from beyond the grave, giving messages, like orders that he gave before he died and stuff like that. Besides that, it's pure Hoffman. So I can also see that as a reason for why some people fell off this series after the 3rd one. Because if they really loved Jigsaw's character, and don't get me wrong, I love Tobin Bell. Like, I love him in this whole franchise, and in many other things I've seen him in. But I think he was perfectly cast for Jon Kramer, for Jigsaw. Like, I can't picture anybody else but Tobin Bell. With his voice and just his looks and how he acts and stuff. Just brilliant stuff. But I can see once Jigsaw died at the end of the last movie, then people would return the following year in the theaters to see Jon really is dead, and now Hoffman, this dickhead, is the new bad guy. I could definitely see that as a big reason why I don't want to say a decent amount, but whatever amount it was, of viewers fell off the series with this installment. Like, I can definitely see it. But Hoffman, he's such a great character to me. Like, he's cunning, he's manipulating, he's intelligent as shit, but he doesn't know how to follow orders. Like, whether it's from Jon or, police, is nobody. He has to be himself, and him, if that even makes sense. Now, it will be me, myself, and I, so that'll be he, himself. Fuck you guys. It's too late/early for this. Really not, though. It's only like 12:45. But fuck you guys anyway, with love. It's always with love. I love you guys. Even if I say fuck you and I make a mistake. It's really saying me love/fuck you. Right? Yeah, that works. But I adore his character. I love Hoffman, and I think he's great in this. If there was a point before that I was trying to make, that's long gone. So let's just move on. But we have Hoffman here in the morgue because the mortician guy doing the autopsy opened up Jigsaw's stomach and found the tape in it, which I think is a cool little detail. I mean, obviously, when they wrote this, they had to start from somewhere and said, all right, let's start with what we had in that movie. And they probably put this little detail in 3, knowing that 4 was coming. Or maybe they had that bit, like that idea planned out already. But right at the end of 3, right before Jeff uses the circular saw and slices Jigsaw's throat, he takes the candle, and it's a very subtle shot. Like, it's not like it lingers on it or anything. It's just, you just see him do it. He takes a candle on the table on the side of his hospital bed that he's in, Jon. And he takes a candle and he just pours the wax onto a little cassette tape. And that's it. Then there's no mention of it again. They don't show it again. And he ended up swallowing it. And the guy doing the autopsy finds it in Jon's stomach. And he says to the other guy, you better call homicide. And that brings Hoffman in. And now Hoffman's going to give a listen to this goddamn tape. So The tape ends up just saying that, hello, detective, congratulations, you're the last one standing, and even though I'm dead, there will still be traps. My work will carry on even after I'm dead. And I've always wondered about this scene. Like, one, is he alone in there? I forgot to look again, but it's like, I think he is, but I hope the morgue workers aren't in the room. Like, because he can't be that stupid. Like, to hear that tape. I mean, it doesn't really incriminate him or anything like that. But still, like, I wouldn't be anywhere near anybody if I was, involved in Jigsaw's whole thing. And I'm the only one left alive now, and I'm the one doing all of this. And two, I always thought that they should have had this scene at the end of 3. Like, I know 3 is long as it is. I think that it's an hour and 50 minutes, hour and 53 minutes, something like that. This is only an hour and a half, hour and 35 minutes. So, I don't know if it was just 3. I forget the length of 2, and who cares, runtime. But my point is that 3 was already long, so maybe that's why they didn't put it there. But I feel like that would have made a great ending for 3. Like, for Hoffman to, that at least, first of all, it shows you Hoffman again before the end of the movie. And then he would listen to the tape after John's autopsy and stuff like that. And then he would listen, and the games are still, will still go long after I died, and then end. Then that would keep people on a nice little cliffhanger. Not that there wasn't already for Saw 4. And then just start it with the opening trap here. But then again, it ties into stuff that happens at the end of 3 that we see in a little bit that converge with these 2 movies, the events that like end up converging. So I can see why they didn't do it. I don't know, food for thought. I thought it always had a little thought that would have been cooler if they had that at the end. But I get why they don't, basically. Now they got this crazy trap, and now these are when all the traps just start. You're not able to survive them. And it's been like that for a little bit now. because Hoffman, because of Amanda, like first and foremost. And I don't think we ever find out, like, how Gordon. I don't think he does the actual traps and stuff. I know he builds them. And like he does all the medical stuff, like here with this trap, we see the one guy who has his eye sewn shut, and the other person who has his mouth sewn shut. So one can't see, but he can hear. The other one can't talk, but he can see. So it's a cool idea, and they're both chained to like this, like motor or gear or something like that. So Gordon, obviously, is the one who did the sewing of the eyes and the mouths and stuff, and so many things from earlier movies, from at least the last one. So that was a question I had in my last video, was how long has Gordon been helping? Like, was it right after the first movie? Like, right after he passed his test? That's kind of what I'm thinking. So that part 2... he might have been doing work there, like doing medical work and, helping Jigsaw. But then again, I mentioned in the last video that Amanda, excuse me, I just had some pizza, so excuse me. But I said in my last video that Amanda, when she was going after Eric Matthews in the bathroom, and he was saying, "You're not Jigsaw, bitch," and like they were both fighting with each other. She had, and when she helped put the tape together, the bathroom together, she had this short black hair. But then when we see her in the last movie, she has much longer hair and a different color. So I was trying to use her hair to try, like in time periods that she had those different types of hair, color and, shortness, length of it, to see if I could figure out when things were taking place, to try to figure out when Gordon could possibly be helping out. But I'd have to put it somewhere between 2 and 3. Between part 2 and part 3. It would have to be between there. I don't think it can't be before the first one, obviously, because he's in the trap. And it can't be right after the first one, because, I'm sure it's going to take a hell of a lot of convincing to get Gordon Like on board with Jon here and his whole plan after just putting him through all that, making him cut his foot off, and was threatening his family. So I'm pretty sure it took some convincing on Jon's part. So Gordon, from this point on, though, for sure, like Gordon is doing all of the work, like anything that is like needs surgery or precision or anything like that is Dr. Gordon taking care of all that. But the traps themselves and like making them unwinnable, it's all Hoffman. And this trap's no exception, this beginning one. Even though someone does survive here, and it's because they're part of a bigger game. So they had to survive, basically. You know what I just realized, too? There's a decent amount of traps so far in this series that if the people involved in the trap, like if it was more than one person or if it's just one person, if they don't move at all, then the trap doesn't start. Because there's at least two, including this one. So at least one other, if not two others, that I can't think of what they are, but I know I can picture it. That when they move their head or their body, it pulls a cord which starts the trap or it starts the timer. So if they don't move at all, it's not going to start the trap or the timer. Like for this one here, they're both chained with the same chain, basically. One going to one guy's neck and one going to the other guy's neck. One, like I said, has his mouth sewn shut but could see. The other one could talk, but he has his eyes sewn shut. But they're attached to the same chain, but the chain's going through like this gear that could pull like one of them into it and stuff like that. But there's a key, or like not a key, but like a pin on the bottom of it, and they specifically show it, like when the bald guy, the one who's blind, is pulling on it and trying to get the attention of the other guy because he can't see that the guy has his mouth sewn shut, and he pulls it and yanks it, and that's what starts the trap, is the pin being pulled out. Kind of like how Adam in the first movie, how the key was in the tub the whole time. But it was, the drain was attached to his foot somehow, like tied to his foot or toe or something like that. So when he woke up in the tub, it pulled the drain out and stuff. So it kind of the same thing applies. If Adam just woke up and didn't move, he would have been able to get the key and get right out of there. This is a little different. This is a pin that's being pulled. But you'd have more time to at least figure out like what's going on. Like without the trap starting, then you'd just be chained up. Then you got all the time in the world like to figure something out. As long as you just don't yank on that chain and make that pin come out. But who's going to know that in this situation, in duress and under so much stress, you don't know what's going on? Of course. But it's just something I noticed. I was like, I've seen that a few other times so far and thought that, but never brought it up in the video. Saying that if they don't move or do anything, then the trap or timer doesn't start, and they're good. And then they can just have all the time in the world to figure it out. So, basically, bald guy ends up dying, and the other guy, with his mouth sealed shut, mouth rips open, and he screams, and title card. And he's the guy who is at the end of the movie and throughout, when we see Eric Matthews on the block of ice and we see Detective Hoffman in the chair with the electricity if it dips too far, and he's the one that's watching after them in that room. So that's the only reason that I can think of why he survives this trap, because he was meant to. Like Hoffman designed it that way for him to win, because they needed him to look over Eric Matthews, I guess. Like, that's the only thing I can think of. Why can't Hoffman look over Matthews while he's tied up in the chair right next to him? I mean, yeah, it might look a little suspicious, but who's watching? Like, if it's just Hoffman and Matthews, you get what I'm saying? So, like, I don't know, like, what to think about that. But that's the only thing I can think of, is that he purposely made it that this trap was escapable, that the guy with the mouth sealed shut was the one to win it, so that he'd be around so he can use him for the whole bigger game going on here. So I completely forgot that trap actually because I was talking everything I was just saying before the whole scene played out. Yeah, they just like beat the shit out of each other. And then the guy with the mouth sewn shut, he has a name. I can't think of it. Trevor? I want to say Trevor. Might be Trevor. So Trevor, excuse me, I'm sorry. I keep fucking burping. Trevor could be Art, but I want to say Trevor. So he just picks up like a hammer or something and like the claw end of it, and he just starts smashing the guy in the head, the bald dude. And then he gets the key that's on the back of the bald guy's neck, and like the numbers are on the back of your mind, like part 2, which we never did see the over the rainbow clue that gives the order that they're supposed to go in. I forgot to mention that in my Saw 3 video because I was thinking of that. And I was like, we never did see that. And yeah, we never did. So I don't know how they were supposed to figure out the order, even if Xavier did not get killed. Like, even if he got all the numbers. I don't know how he was still getting out of there. He wasn't, is the answer. But, forgot my thought. Oh yeah. So, Trevor, after he gets the key, and unlocks the lock on the back of his chain around his neck, and he takes it off, then he opens his mouth up and rips like the stitches or whatever is sewn in his mouth and screams, ah. He couldn't do this like as soon as it started and like say to the guy like, yo, wait, no, like my mouth was sewn shut, your eyes have been sewn shut, let's figure things out together. Like, he couldn't do it then unless this was all just a facade. Like, all of this was bullshit. Like, unless he went into this willingly, had his mouth sewn shut to sell it to the other guy who can't see, so that doesn't make sense. But, like, to go in there and win just because he was going to be involved with the bigger game, the bigger picture going on here. So that, I don't know, but that doesn't make sense because why have your own mouth sewn shut, like by Hoffman? Why would Hoffman put him in this fake trap? If the guy's blind, he can't see that his mouth sewn shut, so why really have it sewn shut? Like, I just answered part of my own question. So that's weird, but title card, Saw 4. So in standard Saw fashion, we had part 2 was basically Eric Matthews' test. Then we had part 3 was Jeff and Lynn's test, but more so Jeff's, and his test was all based on forgiveness for the guy who accidentally hit and killed his son, and the judge and the eyewitness who no one knew was an eyewitness, so that never made sense. But this one is all about Rig. And I don't know why I always call him Riggs. Like, I guess, like, when people are saying, like, this is Riggs' game, or this is, like... So you hear, like, Riggs throughout this, but it's just Rig. It's not Riggs. Rig. No. I don't know. So I'm just going to keep calling him Riggs. I don't know. I think it sounds cooler. But this is his whole game. Like, this movie is his entire game, and his whole lesson is don't go through an unsecure door. It's not hard to do. But, of course, I'm joking with that. But when you stand back and look at it, just don't go through a door that's not secured. Okay, cool. Like, that's how easy it is. But, of course, he has emotions and stuff like that, like human beings do. And we see him and Hoffman and the rest of the detective for Homicide Squad. And they end up with a little camera tank, kind of. It's like a tank with a camera on it. And it's surveilling the area and stuff like that. And it sees, Carrie's body from the last movie, who had her ribs ripped out. And Rig is the first one to say, "Oh no, it's Carrie," and fucking books it down the stairs and stuff, and then right through the door, and he's fine then. But then he gets grilled by Hoffman and saying that, never go through an unsecured door, and it has. I like how he talks to Riggs here. He ends up saying to him like we chose this, like the work that they do, and they go on a little bit about how they're supposed to cherish their life because it's written behind Rig. Rig's sitting like against the wall, and on the wall that he's leaning against says "Cherish your life." That Jigsaw put there. But I like their back and forth because Hoffman keeps saying "we," but I think he's just using "we" as a term for you, Rig. Like, basically, he's talking about Rig because he's Jigsaw now. Like, he's the big daddy, Hoffman. So it sounds like he's purposely messing with Rig a little bit, or at least like trying to like implant something in his mind that'll maybe make him succeed at his game. But again, I don't know what Hoffman's whole end game is because he's making all these traps impossible to get out of alive. So I don't think he ever had an intention for Rig to pass his tests. Then why even do these tests in games? Why not just fucking murder Rig and be done with it? So I don't know. I forget the whole like reason for this game going on. But Eric Matthews is trapped on a block of ice, and the whole thing near the end, his test, he fails his test about going through an unsecured door. He has another one right there, and he just races on through it, which kills Eric Matthews and the dude Trevor with his mouth sewn shut. I really hope his name is Trevor by the time we reach the end of this movie. And the whole plan doesn't work because Rig just can't do it. But when he sees Carrie here, it's heartbreaking a bit because, I mean, we know them from the second movie. God, they weren't in the first movie. Carrie might have been. I don't think Rig was. I'm pretty damn sure Rig wasn't. But we know the two of them working together since part 2. And we saw her brutal death scene in the last movie and by Amanda's hands. And so to see her on the camera like that and then have Rig like run down like wishing that she was still alive, as he says, it's a gut punch. Like, it really sucks, like seeing her hanging dead like that. And it looks great though, the effects, like with her ribs that are bursted open, and then there's a rat like coming out of the side of it like it was inside of her and it's poking its head out, and then it looks fucking disgusting, but it looks gnarly, man. It looks really good. And great scene. Like, I love this whole scene with the dialogue between Hoffman and Rig, and just the effects on Carrie, and the how Rig is feeling about Carrie, and all of that. Love it all. As well as the continuation of this scene was amazing too. When we finally first meet Agent Strum and Agent Perez, the duo from another. Can't think of anything that rhyme with duo right off the top of my head. But the two of them, awesome. I mean, Strom is a dick and, like, very overbearing. But, like, his character is kind of written that way. Like, he's kind of supposed to be that way. But I love how they introduce themselves to Hoffman. And then how can I help the FBI? And then them saying that Carrie, and maybe this is why I called Carrie Perez in my video for Saw 2, because she was a liaison for the FBI for Strom and Perez, and her last message said like open the door and you will see, or something like that. And now they're going through the crime scene and they notice that the lock was open and that she couldn't get out, and then Hoffman ends up saying no, yeah, it was staged for her execution and that it's not a jigsaw trap. And then Strom starts going off on how Amanda Young wouldn't be able to put her up there. Like, Carrie was 130-something pounds. Amanda was 107 on her arrest report. And then Hoffman's trying to say something to explain it, and then Strom's basically like, we're here to do what you guys couldn't do. We're here to find out who's been helping Jon and Amanda Young. So Strom means business, man, and he's gonna find that motherfucker who's helping them, which is right in the room with him, who we just said those lines to. This is also where we are introduced to, not formally, but through interrogation videotape of Hoffman interviewing and interrogating Jill Tuck, Jon's wife. So I forget if we see her. I need a new chair. This whole back of my chair here, like, it was up to here and it just fell. Like the screws underneath. It's a whole thing and has nothing to do with Saw. Well, maybe, because Jon was an engineer, so maybe I should get a Jigsaw back to life, have him fix my goddamn chair, but just fix it, not like modify it so I'm like in some torture trap next time I make a video and you're like, oh my god, we gotta help him, what do we do? No one knows the rules of this trap. And then just fucking some crazy shit happens. But yeah, after all that, you expect me to remember what I was thinking about? Rigg now just got home because he was told by Hoffman, after Hoffman walks in with Strom and Perez, and they see Rigg watching the interview of Hoffman with Jill. So I forget if we see and meet Jill, like if she's in this movie, or if I think she is. I don't think it's just the 5th and 6th one and 7th one that she's in. Maybe not, I'll see. But we get her introduced also. And then Rigg basically says, like, Eric could still be out there, like Eric Matthews. And it's been 6 months now that he's been missing. So at least we know that 3 and 4 take place 6 months after part 2. So all this time, 6 months, Matthews is missing. There's never been a body because he's alive, obviously. So there's no, it's just a missing persons case. So him telling Hoffman, saying like, yeah, like if we can find him alive, like, yeah, that's gonna mean something to me. So he's hell bent on just trying to save everybody who he cares about. And even Hoffman says, like, when Strom asks him and Perez asks, who is that? And he says it's Rigg, head of our SWAT team, and says, what's his problem? And Hoffman replies and says, well, everyone around him keeps dying. So, I mean, Kerry, Eric Matthews, which, you know, he doesn't know he's alive, but he's hoping he is. But guy's going through a lot. So, I mean, I could see how hard it is for him to resist that urge of bursting through a door, or from not wanting to go home from work because of that small chance that maybe they'll hear something and he'll be the first one able to run and meet his friend. Like, I understand that 100%. And I think they do a very good job of portraying that. Like, I feel like the actor who plays Rigg does a great job throughout this whole movie of showing, like, that pain of just losing people he loves and cares about and works with, and, like, good friends of his. Like, he plays it very well. That whole idea and the whole theme of his game is patience, basically. And all of that is played on so well in this game. So in this movie, that's about a game going on. But he just gets home, and then he's about to get kidnapped here and taken to the start of his game in the movie. See, first I flipped, then I flopped. I had to flip-flop. Anyway, back to Saw 4. Alright, so a few things here. It's going to be long. I shouldn't even say that anymore for any of my videos. They're all going to be long. For major franchises and movies I love. Obviously, for other ones, not so much. But the few things to go over here. So, first of all, I misremembered he didn't get kidnapped yet, Rigg. But he talked to his wife, and she said what I just said, basically. And she said, like, you can't save everyone. Like, you can't save the world. And she was going to her mom's for a few days, and he's supposed to have off, but he says he can't go, and she ends up leaving. Then we cut back to the police department, and Perez and Strom are having a little conversation, and first Strom's asking, like, what's a SWAT team member doing, looking at the interview between Jon's ex, Jill. I forget if they're still married or not. Pretty sure they're still married. I don't know. When we find out, I'll let you know. But Jill and Hoffman. And Perez drops a little bomb here and says that, do you think we should tell Hoffman what Carrie said in her last message to them? And her last message said basically that 2 officers are in danger. So she's saying, I think if Hoffman or anybody else in here is possibly in danger, and Strom cuts her off and says, like, it's not your call. So there's that. Then I never noticed this, but it's clever as hell when they have Hoffman walk in the room and some guy goes up right next to him and says, detective, there's another doctor went missing from the hospital. And then he's I forget who says it, Hoffman or him. He's like, do you think it's, and Hoffman, yeah, there's the other guy. And Hoffman's like, yeah, if you need me, call my cell. So that's obviously Lynn Denlin, the doctor from the last movie, Jeff's wife. I never noticed that little line. That's cool. So, I mean, if people didn't know that this was taking place at the same time as Saw 3, I wonder how many people caught that and said to themselves, maybe this takes place at the same time. I wonder if anybody, I'm sure there were a few, maybe. But props to those people, because I never even noticed that line until just now. And I've seen this movie a handful of times. So anyone who didn't know the ending and just watched this blindly, not knowing that it was happening at the same time, and they heard that one line and they were able to put it together, fucking A, man. You guys are gods. It's also important to keep in mind with this movie, which I actually just had to remind myself because of something that happened, that since this is taking place at the same time as Saw 3, Amanda's still alive, throughout this whole movie until the end. Because when Rig gets kidnapped, just had a random thought, and I was like, wait, because then they show Hoffman right after that in a different scene. Excuse me. Apologies for the burping. I don't know, that pizza really got to me. But they cut to Hoffman in the next scene. And I was like, wait, then who kidnapped Rig? And then I was like, oh, yeah, that's right, Amanda, because this takes place at the same time. So it's important to keep that in mind, that Amanda is still alive throughout this whole movie. Now, we also see Hoffman we don't see the letter, what it says yet, but I mentioned this in the last movie. Well, last video. Whenever I say last movie, I'm talking about my video. Because obviously I'm not in the movie, and I wasn't saying something in the movie. So when I say in the last movie, I was saying, yeah, I was in Saw 3. You guys, it's a small little scene, small little line. You guys all missed it, but I was there, trust me. I was saying in the video that we see Amanda just see the envelope that says her name on it. Then in this one now we see not what's written on the paper, but we see Hoffman putting the paper in the manila envelope and putting it in the drawer. So I'm pretty sure it's part 6 when we find out exactly what was written there about Amanda being with Cecil, or Cecil, however you say his name, Cecil, I'm pretty sure, when they went to rob the clinic that Jill worked at and caused her miscarriage and everything. So I think it's cool how they show that building up to the reveal of it in the 6th film. Like, we see it from Amanda's point of view in the last movie. We see it from Hoffman's point of view here, putting it in the drawer. Then we finally see it in 6, and find out exactly what's the deal with this. Because I'll never forget when I saw 3 in theaters. It was bugging me afterwards. I was like, what was that whole envelope about? Then they showed it again the next year with this movie when I saw it in theaters. And again, I was like, dude, come on. They better tell me at the end of this, what's going on with this envelope. Then the next year, 5 came, and there's nothing to do with it. And then I thought they just forgot about it. So it was actually one of the biggest reveals for me, watching this franchise as it came out, was what was in that envelope. And what did it say? That was meant for Amanda. It was when I got that reveal, it was great. So one of the best things about this franchise upon the first viewings of all the first 7 entries, like in theaters, was the reveal of what it says on that note. Like, so we get to see him putting it away. Then Rig, see, it's like, I want to say Riggs, but his name is Rig. Riggs wakes up in his bathtub, like he just had a kidney taken out or something, and he ends up, this time it makes sense. Remember I said in one of the videos that the old TVs they have and how they just turn on by themselves is absolute bullshit. This one actually makes sense though, because when he opens his door, there is a long string or cable tied to a device that's built on the back of the old TV. So it's got to be a switch or something like that, because when it pulls it, then the tape starts. So does a device like that exist? I mean, it's homemade, so the answer could be no, but yes, because somebody made it. Would it work this way? Who knows? But again, small little thing. But at least it has an explanation here. At least we could see it, that there's some type of mechanism that's allowing it to play. And him opening the door and stuff triggers that. But he gets his whole little Billy the Puppet video, and it ends up showing him that Matthews is still alive. And it shows feed of Matthews, all the beard and stuff now, and he's hanging, but his feet are touching a block of ice underneath him. And after 90 minutes, we got 90 minutes on the clock here, that he has to, he has to basically just have patience. Like, his whole game is about here. But he's going to try to get there as fast as humanly possible. And so he knows now that Eric Matthews is alive. So that's all he needed to hear. Now he's going to go hell's bells and go all out until he can finally get to Matthews and free him and get him back. So Rig walks into the next room, and he sees a woman with the pig mask on, which is a cool look, actually. You don't really see the pig mask like mentioned or in pictures of like horror icons or like iconic masks or any. You don't really see the pig mask from this series, but she's wearing that, and she's chained up, and then he realizes this, so he takes the mask off of her and finds out that there's a tape. He plays the tape, and Jon basically says, like, your instinct is going to be to save her. I'm asking you to walk away, to just know when to not try to save everybody. And he straight up tells him, just walk away, but like, make your choice. And of course he tries saving her, and this reminds me of Piranha 3D that I watched last week. And while I was watching it, I might have even mentioned in the video, it reminded me of this, because we have the trap here with her hair, her ponytail, that's being ripped like more and more and more as the gears go. And God, man, that's gotta hurt so bad. Like, I don't have long hair, I never had a ponytail, but God, I can imagine just like the pressure being pulled, and then your scalp starts to give way, and oh, that's gotta be so painful, man. And then he tries helping her, and he ends up jamming the machine. Well, not jamming the machine, but getting her out. And then he ends up finding out a lesson, which I'm sure Jon wanted him to learn. There's a reason not to just go blindly save everybody. I mean, this bitch tries killing him afterwards, because she had her own tape saying that this cop is going to come and try to save you. If you want to survive and live, you have to kill him. So Hoffman is purposely, I keep saying Jon, but I mean Jigsaw, which is Hoffman in this case. But Jigsaw is still alive. Let's not forget that. So it is Jigsaw. So thinking as we're going here. But it reminded me of Piranha 3D when I was watching that, or vice versa, reminded me of this. with the propeller on the boat. And there's the chick with her gets her ponytail caught on the propeller and it catches her hair and then it just rips her whole top of skin off and it's just her skeleton underneath. It looks so awesome. And I said to myself or in the video out loud, I said, that reminds me of that trap from Saw. And I'm going to be seeing that soon too. And it looks great. Like, the people don't talk about the effects work in the Saw series enough. Now, they're not mind-blowing or anything like that. And you guys know me with effects, for practical effects. They're not, like, amazing, but they're pretty good. Like, especially some of them are pretty damn good looking. And, I mean, this looks pretty good. Like, where their scalp being ripped off and everything. Great job. What a goofy fucking edit, man. Like, she's trying to stab Rig and stuff like that. See, sometimes I get Rig out, sometimes it's Riggs. Just like Leigh Whannell. But she was a prostitute, this girl, and her tape, like I said, is the only thing to save yourself is to kill this cop. Like, let it, like, rot in prison, basically. So they start fighting because she's trying to stab him when he comes back. Because he was getting, like, bandages or some shit for her. And when he comes back, she starts trying to stab him, and they're fighting. He's like, I just saved your life. And she's like, I'll kill you. And he tugs on her hair, and then he chucks her through, like, the bathroom, I'm guessing, glass door. Smashes right through it, and as soon as she smashes through it, a door opens and the cop walks in and they're in the police department. It's a weird edit, man. Like, what a weird choice. Like, for a scene transition there. It feels very off. Like, I didn't even remember that. All I was thinking of was Slumber Party Massacre 3. When there's this girl who's getting cornered by the killer, and her grand plan is she says, fuck you, and she proceeds to throw herself through a plate glass door and dies, like right there on the spot. And that's all I thought of just now. And every time I see this, pretty much. So that's probably why I never really noticed that cut. But God, it's so weird. Like, I don't know what they were thinking with that. But then they come in and say that shots were just fired at Riggs' apartment. So they're heading to Riggs' apartment. And then Riggs picks up 2 keys with a note that says one saves a life and one takes it away. So we got 2 keys. One will save someone. One will send them to hell in a handbasket. So we get a little flashback with Eric Matthews here, which, I mean, I don't know why this was even needed. Like, I guess maybe just to pad the runtime just a little bit to get it to a little over 90 minutes. I mean, it's only like a minute and a half long, 2 minutes. But they show Eric Matthews, like they show the room with Hoffman there and Matthews hanging on the ice block and stuff. And then they show like a close-up of his face. And then they show a flashback to him saying, I'll fucking kill you, to Amanda while he's locked in the bathroom. Almost as if like, hi, remember him? This is Donnie Wahlberg. He played Eric Matthews, Detective Matthews in part 2. Like, remember? Like, that's what it feels like. It feels like a yearly reminder. Like when these came out in theaters and stuff, it seemed like, hey, remember this guy from two movies ago? Like, this is the same guy. Like, that seems like the only reason this is here, because then it just goes on to for nothing. Like, he shows him eat a rat, and try to show that's how long he's been down there before he was captured again. He never got free, so he always was captured. So I don't know what that whole flashback is supposed to mean, aside from what I said. Hey, remember this guy? Just in case you don't, here's a little flashback that'll make you remember this guy. That's all that scene seems like to me. I was trying to hit pause and just it wouldn't click, so I had to go, ah! So they show up in Riggs' apartment. Agent Perez and Strom and the whole team. And there's pictures of the victims all over the place, and obviously the dead chick on the floor, and they're trying to think, is Rig working for Jigsaw, or is he playing his own game? Perez seems to think that it might be Rig, might be the accomplice. You can tell right off the bat Strom has a hunch on Hoffman. Like, as soon as she mentions the profile and stuff like that of who's helping Jon, and she ends up saying that Hoffman's a decorated detective, and so he's out, and he rebuts that like right away and says that doesn't mean anything, and then starts talking about Rig. So then they start looking at the wall of photographs, and Hoffman. There's so many characters in this in this friggin' movie, in this series. Sorry if I keep mixing them up. Strom ends up saying one of these pictures doesn't belong, and you have to see what he sees, because it says "see what I see" written on the wall, and he's like, yeah, like how Riggs looks and stuff. Maybe to them he looks one way, but we have to see him how Jon sees him, see how I see, or see what I see. And he ends up going and saying one of these pictures don't belong to Perez, and he ends up taking one off the wall, and it's Jill Tuck, Jon's wife or ex-wife. And let's go talk to her right now, he says. So let's go talk to her right now, I say. Now, cops do this all the time, but I love the inclusion of the line in there. When they get Jill into an interrogation room with Perez sitting down with her and Strom in the background, kind of like good cop, bad cop. But right before they go in, he says, have them turn the air off in there. I love that line, because they do that shit. They do it for a fucking reason. So if you're lying, you'll start sweating. Like, calculated, but great addition with that little line they throw in there. Oh, and they find where Jill works. Well, I mean, the FBI, they are. So it's not like they can't. But from four walls build a home is the motto for Jill's place that she works, or company she owns. It's a clinic, basically, methadone clinic, like something like that. Now I'm starting to think, is it the same thing, or is this something else? I'm pretty sure it is four walls build a home. I know that's a motto, though. That's the motto. So that's how they tracked her down, and they have her in the interview room, and Perez gets up and leaves, and it's just Strom. But then we cut to Riggs, who goes to his next location. It's a hotel, and there's like a bum there, and then there's the guy who runs the hotel. So he goes upstairs, Rig, to where the key that he got fits, and he ends up opening the door, going inside, and there's a little chest there. And he opens the chest up, and there's the pig mask. And he says that the guy in the next room, he's done some terrible things, basically, and that you have the tools, to help him, get his punishment, or to play his game. But he ultimately, he's in control of what happens to him. So he says, you're going to need a mask, a disguise, though. There's cameras. You don't want to be seen. Hello? Like, he just walked through the lobby, like, of this hotel, and walked upstairs, through the hallway, to the door, into the room, with no mask on. So, like, what's that about? Like, does he really need the mask? Like, I don't know. I don't know what that line is about. That's so weird. Saying that you need a disguise. There's cameras, you need a disguise on. After he walked into the building and through the lobby and was seen by people and up the stairs and down the hall, like, I don't get what that means at all. Like, not one bit. Like, what a weird inclusion of a line. Okay, so Jill is the ex-husband, the ex-wife of Jon. So they got divorced. because she specifically interjects when Strom is saying like that your husband, and she goes ex. So they are divorced. But he's basically grilling her and saying that you have a very good possibility of being an accomplice of John's. And we get a little flashback of, we see Cecil, the drug addict who, with Amanda, robbed the clinic and caused the miscarriage. Him fighting with some guy because he told him to shut the fuck up, but then they start beating the shit out of each other, and then Cecil goes to like take something out of his pocket, a knife maybe or something, and John steps in and he's like, you don't want to do that. And he's like, what's your problem? He's like, you're my problem. You're starting to become everybody else's. John comes in, man, and he takes fucking control, and Cecil listens. He ends up putting whatever it was away, and he ends up stop being a dick. So, hey, John could be pretty intimidating for his age, but much more so as Jigsaw, I'm going to say. Like, much more so as Jigsaw with the crazy traps. But we get that nice little flashback. And then we have Strom just really going at it with Jill here. And it is all the same place. It's all the clinic. The 4 walls build a home and cherish your life are both mottos for her drug clinic. So we see a little flashback with John and Jill and him showing her around this new warehouse space. See? Nice condensed word. Warehouse space. I like Wearspace actually, in this little place that he got, and starts showing her this special clock that is still ticking the mechanism inside it after 300 years, and it withstood the test of time. Then he ends up saying, I want to show you something else, and shows her a little doll version of Billy the puppet. And then we cut back to Rig, and Rig has the big fat dude who's apparently a pedophile or he raped someone. I mean, they show one picture to him that you can't really see it. I can't even tell if it's a guy or a girl. It doesn't really matter. It's a despicable guy either way. But there's other pictures hung up around the room. So he's either a serial molester or a rapist or a pedophile or something. But he says he already paid for it. So he's been to jail. He's been to prison for at least one of the crimes. I'm guessing just one. I don't know what the laws are in New York or in New York or wherever this takes place on multiple counts of, any of those crimes. Who knows? But he's out. But he has to basically put his hands on these buttons and he has to gouge his eyes out. Again, these little things come, ding, ding, and will just take his eyes out. So he has to make that choice whether to push those buttons or not. Let's see, in game number 2, if he's going to have what it takes. Guys, are you ready? Well, here we go. And he didn't have what it takes. He's dead. I mean... Again, this is Jon, though. I keep forgetting that Jon's alive. So this was meant to be able to be survived. But he just ran out of time, I guess, like right at the last second. But he had to either push the buttons to take his eyes out, because Jon says on the tape that he was a voyeur. But then there's the TV on the side of the bed, on the table, nightstand, is playing a tape of this guy basically raping some girl. So he's done this many, many, many times. And Jon says also on the tape that he's used his body as an instrument of abuse and for abuse. So the alternative to taking his eyes out are all his limbs are ripped off. So he does get one eye poked out or stabbed into. And then he just says, one more, I can do one more. And the time runs out and his arm and legs get ripped off his body. And the little of what we see looks pretty good, though. Wish we saw more, but we don't. Oh, and then the whole little crime scene mantra for this one, like See What I See was the last one, is Feel What I Feel is the one here. Then he gets a card that says, become the teacher and save a life. Go back to where it all began. So we got to go back to where it all began. Do you know where it is? The Gideon meatpacking plant, right? Pretty sure. So Riggs has this there's a flashback. Riggs has a memory, I guess, of this situation when him and Hoffman were in a school. They got called to a school, and the father of this girl was accused of some type of abuse, like physical, mental, sexual. I don't think they mention it. They don't mention it, actually. But the father is sitting in, I'm guessing it's the principal's office, and the principal's not there, but the agent, or Detective Rigg and Hoffman are both there. And the father's sitting there, and they're talking to the girl, and they're standing like, the both of them are talking to each other. This their faces, looking at each other right here. Back over here is the chair with the guy in it. And he just looks out and goes to the girl, to his daughter, or his stepdaughter, whoever this is. No one sees that? Like, they were like halfway like this. So it's like you don't like see something out of the corner of your eye? Like, it's possible, don't get me wrong. But just the chance this guy took to do this with two detectives right there, like 6 feet away from you. I don't know, man. That takes some balls to be able to do that, knowing that the fucking cops are right there. And then the guy ends up putting his hands on Rigg and saying, like, sometimes kids these days, and pats him on the back, and Rigg's like, yo, get off me. And then he decks him in the face. And then I love the guy, his response, where he's like, you just made the biggest mistake of your life. He's like, I'm going to take him for all he's got. Apparently he didn't do shit, because Rigg is fine. So this guy probably got what was coming to him. If anything, he maybe ended up in one of Jigsaw's traps. But this is a whole nother event that Rigg can't control his emotion. That he can't calm himself down. He can't think logically. He thinks with his emotion. And that's the biggest flaw of him, is that, it's not all about patience. I mean, in a way it is. But it's that he can't think logically. He can only think with his heart. He can only think with his emotions. And I think a lot of us have that issue. I mean, I know I do. And like 90% of the time I do. Some people less, some people more, some people don't have that at all. But I think it's a beautiful thing to have. Like, especially every now and then. But I think it's played on very well here. That, like, this is his biggest flaw. And it depends on a person-to-person basis whether they consider it a flaw or a pro. I mean, if they're getting screwed over by the people that they're always trying to help and care for, yeah, it's a flaw. Like me. If it's something that is bringing you good, like, and making you feel good and stuff, and bringing you joy for helping other people, and it's not backfiring on you, could be an awesome pro. But for him here, obviously, it's a con. It's a negative thing, because he's going into dangerous situations, through unsecured doors and punching this dude in the face. Where he could have been suspended, he could have a lawsuit, all of that. He doesn't know how to think logically in the moment. He only can think with his heart and his emotions, and that's what this whole game is about. And Hoffman knows Rigg. He knows him pretty damn well. So he knows how Rigg thinks. So he's like 10 steps ahead of Riggs, like in every possible way that there is in this whole movie. And then back to Strom, interrogating and talking to Jill. And then I love when she says, "Do you know who Gideon?" She mentions Gideon, and he says, "Who's Gideon?" And I love how she leads off the startler's question of, "Do you know anything about the Chinese zodiac?" And Strom's like, "Oh God!" Like he's just like done talking to her, and then he knows that he's in for a whole nother story, and then she's saying that everything was perfectly planned with her pregnancy. Everything was planned perfectly with Jon. And then they show the scene at the clinic when Cecil comes, and we don't see Amanda there yet. That's what we see when we see the flashback with when we finally see what was written in the paper in the envelope that Hoffman put in the drawer earlier. But we see Cecil come back and say that his jacket's in there, and Jill opens the clinic door, goes, grabs his jacket, comes back out, and then he pulls a knife on her and says, like, "I don't want to hurt you, but you're going to open that fucking door," and stuff. Opens it, he goes in and probably grabs whatever drugs he can, and when on his way out, he pushes the door and it slams against her stomach, and she starts bleeding right then and there, and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." I mean, I get it, he's a drug addict. I mean, he's doing shit for drugs. But man, like, oh, that's so fucked up. And he deserves everything that happens to him. Like, from Jon and stuff later on. I forget if it's right in here in this episode. That's what it feels like almost, this series. It feels like a TV show. Like, with all, like, how soap opera-ish it is. That's how it feels. Like, this episode on Saw. Like, I feel like this would have been good, actually, as a TV series like Saw. Like, I still think that there's some potential for it. So who knows? Maybe we'll see a Saw television series one day. We're getting a Camp Crystal Lake one. Who would have thought of that forever ago? I mean, we got Friday the 13th, that series, but that sucked. I mean, there's some good stuff in there, but not great. This could be a great series, or it could be terrible. So who knows? But it has that soap opera feel to it. So it feels like an episode. But yeah, like it's like I said, I get he's a drug addict. I know why he's doing what he's doing, but there's no fucking excuse for that. I mean, he fucking killed a baby. Like he killed Jon and Jill's kid. Like, and his name was Gideon, and that's how it all plays back to the question that Strom asked after getting all this, and she ended up, miscarriaging, or I think it was a miscarriage, right? I don't know if it's a different term after the baby's a certain, so many weeks. Who knows? A stillbirth or something, but no, wouldn't be blood like that. Who the fuck knows? It's something. People who know, you know what I'm talking about. But then we get back to the FBI agents. This movie, I'll say this. I could see why this one lost people also, besides the reasons I mentioned at the beginning of this. Wow, it's past an hour already. There's a lot of information. Like, there's a lot of information and exposition being given in this movie. Like, a lot. Like, basically, it's all Riggs's game, then cut to a bunch of information. Then Riggs cut to a bunch of information, and just back and forth and back and forth. And we have Strom and Jill's whole interrogation scene. All of that is exposition. All of that is to put information out there. But, now this is a big but, and I cannot lie. No other brother will deny. Well, if a girl walks in within it, I don't know, it popped into my head because I said it. But you get spawned. All right, I'm done now. I'm done. But I don't remember what I was talking about now. Big but. However, it's a good exposition for me. Like, I like how they do it. Because they're not just giving you information of what's happening here and now in this movie. You're getting information, exposition of things that happened in the past. in the first two movies. Don't forget, because this one's going same time, taking place as the third one. So you get past information, you get present information, you're getting setups and stuff for the next movies, the next several movies. So the whole way that it's done, I absolutely love it. Like, they did it so well of covering stuff from the past that hasn't been addressed yet, the story with Rig and everything that's going on here in the actual movie, and the things that are to come, that they're planting the seedlings of. Like, they handle it so well, I love it to death. But I can see that being a reason, or even maybe the reason, for people not caring for this movie as much, or at all, like, compared to the first three. Like, absolutely. This is something I never caught. Yeah, it is. Ivan. The fat guy, the pimp and pedophile is what Strom says on his file or something like that, was partners with Rig as a police officer. I never knew that. Wow. Like, that kind of blew my mind. Like, he was saying, Strom was saying, every partner that this guy has is dead or becomes dead. And then he says, like, Ivan, he said Perez says that he didn't kill Ivan. And that, it was the trap and everything. But, wow, I didn't know that Ivan is the guy's name, first of all. And two, that Riggs was partners with him. Very crazy. Did not know that. And then we find out the two officers that were in trouble from Kerry's last message. In fact, Agent Strom and Agent Perez. So, I don't know why Kerry didn't just say that in the message. Like, say it's you two. Like, you're the ones in trouble. I don't know why she wouldn't say that. Maybe she couldn't, or, it has to be, there's a rule, no talking through email, only in person. Who knows? Or maybe she didn't find out until after she sent the message or something like that. But apparently, it turns out being Strom and Perez. Oh, so the guy who tore his mouth that was sewn shut open in the trap at the very beginning? Yeah, his name's not Trevor. Trevor is the dead bald dude with the eyes sewn shut. Art is the name of the guy. And I wanted to say Art because on Amazon Prime, like, if you flick the button or whatever, it shows the actors in the scene and their character names. And it just said here Art. Oh, at the beginning it said Trevor and Art. So I was like, I don't know why Trevor sounds familiar. And I didn't look at the pictures because you couldn't really make out either of them. But I was like, Art does sound like it could be it, though. But let me go with Trevor. That sounds familiar. And his fucking name is Art. That's my point. Just like Art the Clown. Except this one's not funny and he doesn't murder people brutally. But they show the scene with the three of them with Art and Eric Matthews and Hoffman in the chair. And he's basically telling Matthews, because Matthews tries killing himself. He just says, fuck you, when he steps off the block of ice. And then they show, like, his half, where he broke his leg off, or the bottom, his foot. So they show the stump, and the stump is, like, hanging on, kind of, too, and, like standing on it. I don't know how that works, actually. Like, I mean, I guess it's just, like, his lower, his foot, so it's not too much of a distance, maybe like that, something like that. But he's standing, and then he just gets off of it and tries hanging himself. And then you see how it dips a little bit, and water starts heading towards Hoffman. And Art comes and picks him up and puts him back on the block and says, idiot, it's like, you die, then you're killing him also. He gets electrocuted. So, and it kills Art also as a device on his neck. So if he tries killing himself and he dies, all three of them die. Well, as far as two of them know. Obviously, Hoffman doesn't. And okay, that's right. I forgot all about this. that Art, the guy whose name I've been calling Trevor for the whole video, he was the lawyer for the guy who, tapped Rig on the back, the pedophile dude, or the guy molesting his daughter, stepdaughter, whatever, and got punched in the face by Rig. Art was his lawyer. And basically, Hoffman, Rig, and Art were all in a room together and talking about, possible settlement or jury and court case and everything like that over what happened. And Hoffman basically lied for Rig and said that he saw the whole thing. Like, Art's client, the pedophile dude, molester, whatever, attacked Rig first. And he says, are you going to say that in front of a grand jury? And he says, I already signed internal affairs, document and stuff like that. So he lied for Rig. And they're thick as thieves, as cops are, as Art says. But says it'll come back to haunt you someday. And then right after he says that, it shows a shot of Hoffman in the room. And then it shows a shot of Hoffman with the gang in his mouth, in the present day, in the room that him and Matthews and Art are in. Which is kind of cool. How it shows like it's going to come back to you. Where then it pans on shit coming back to him. If he was actually in that situation. So it's another good way of playing on the audience for the first time of seeing this movie. Like, the people who are viewing this movie for the first time and don't know Hoffman's involved and that he's in no real danger there in the room. From him saying it's going to come back, back to you, then it's showing him in present day that all that shit is coming back to haunt him. It works that way when you don't know that Hoffman's involved. So I like that whole thing too. Like, really, really cool how they include that little flashback. Oh, and Rig went back to where it all began, which was the school, where he punched this guy in the face. Now, I love this scene here. This next trap. Your life is in their hands, or I can't read whatever the hell it says. It's cutting off the bottom. But it says, what the hell does it say on the other thing? 2 seconds. Yeah, okay. On the chalkboard it says, save as I save. So, see as I see, feel what I feel, and save as I save. Then on a box, it says, your life is in her hands. And then he notices... Well, first, of course, he notices there's 2 human beings back to back with arrows put, like, strategically placed in between, so it's going through, like, safe spots on her, but I'm pretty sure it's going through, like, vital organs on him. And it turns out the guy was the guy that Rig punched in the face. And this is his wife. So... the guy still is alive, and they're about to listen to the tape. Yeah, so, like I said, she has the arrows through her in non-lethal places, and he has it in, like, major organs. I think they even show his penis, like, on the anatomy board and stuff. They show a dot on, like, the tip of the dick. So I guess he has one through there, too. But... he's on the tape. It's a great tape, actually. Like, one of my favorites in the series, like, for Jigsaw's voice and what he's saying. He basically says that, like, for how many, like, he explains what I just explained with arrows going through and stuff like that, and then says, but you know all this, so well and stuff. How many times has your husband beat you? How many times has he hurt you? And it goes into all this, like, really deep stuff. And it sounds great. Like, I love his vocal delivery during that entire tape. The dialogue, everything. Really, really cool. Then she basically becomes the one you're rooting for immediately. And obviously, he dies, the guy. And she's okay. All right, so back to Strom and Perez and co. as they all close in on the room after Rig ends up saying to the woman after putting his jacket on her, because she's saying she's so cold, saying that you got to save yourself. And he leaves, and he does pull the fire alarm. So he's not going to just let her bleed out. And they do come and get her when the cops will get there with Perez and Strom. And again, looking at the things, see, save how I save, or save as I save, whatever it is. And basically putting together what happened there. And turns out that the guy Art, his name is Art Blank. So he ended up defending all three of these people in their court cases. The last guy, Ivan, for rape or whatever it was, and the prostitute at the beginning, and with the hair trap, and this guy who was, got punched in the face by Rig. So they're trying to get now the address of this place, which is going to turn out being the Gideon meatpacking plant, which is where Rig is heading now. Oh, and then Perez also tells Strom that in addition to the last three victims being represented by Art Blank, he also represents Jill Tuck. So he represents Jigsaw's ex-wife too. Then Strom basically asks Perez about the address that they were trying to find. And she says, no luck, but there's a secondary property that was co-signed by someone or something like that. And they said it's the building they're in, at the school. And they go into the office, and Billy the doll, or Billy the puppet, is sitting there, and he has a tape. So Strom goes to the left of the room, and Perez goes and pushes the tape, and it says that hello, Agent Perez, and says that your partner, Agent Strom, is going to kill an innocent person. So I'm trying to think what that means, because I can't remember. So I'm wondering what he's talking about. But then he starts whispering purposely, Jigsaw, on the tape, so he's talking low, and she's like, what is that? And she puts her face to listen, and something there's a cannon or compressed air, something inside the puppet's face that explodes the face right into her face, and she just has it looks like shrapnel almost, but it's like the puppet's face, and just jagged pieces of it all over the place in her. And then the paramedics come and they take her away, and she ends up giving a cross or something to Strom, a necklace. But this is where they basically faked her death until part 6, because Hoffman thought she was dead until her reveal of being back alive in the 6th movie. So cool little scene here that indeed 2 of them were in trouble. And we know what happens to Strom eventually. And we know what happens to him at the beginning of the next movie and the end of it. So 2 things happen to him, and Perez almost died here. So sucks for these 2 FBI agents, man. And then you see Strom on the phone calling Agent Perez's parents and saying, I have bad news. And again, they do it very well of leaving her fate up in the air. And then again, when he goes into the interrogation room to talk to Jill again, says the same thing. Says, you see the blood on my shirt? And he's like, this was from my partner. She's fighting for her life right now. So they do a good job of that, of leaving her fate up in the air. So when they do come out and say in the next one that to Hoffman, that Perez died, comes off as believable. It really does. And he ends up losing it after that phone call. He ends up going right into Jill. He takes some pictures off the wall in his office of Billy the puppet and the bike that he rides, or tricycle, and all of that. Comes in and starts screaming at Jill, even pulls the table away, picks her up and almost chokes her against the mirror. He goes off on her, man, and starts saying who's Art Blank, where is he? He's the accomplice between with working with Jon and stuff, and he's your fucking lawyer. Where is he? Starts grilling her completely. So we have the scene when it's kind of like a flashback within a flashback, and Strom, was grilling Jill, and Jill ends up saying to Strom and having this whole flashback of Art and Jill coming to wherever John was, and talking to John, and Art says, it's a tragedy what happened about Gideon dying, the miscarriage, and John is so out of it. He's like, just get the fuck out of here. And this is like a friend of his and stuff. He said, just get the fuck out. You heard me. And then Jill says that he was basically blaming her and stuff for what happened with Cecil and the baby and stuff, and that a few months later or shortly after that is when he was diagnosed with cancer and he tried killing himself and stuff. So this is kind of what broke John and what brought about this whole Jigsaw persona and all his work that he's working on and his life's work. And then we have Jill notice a picture of Cecil in the area that John's standing in, and she says, like, why do you have Cecil's picture? And we're like, what do you do to him? Then we get another flashback inside of that flashback of Cecil like walking around this street fair and he's stealing little trinkets and stuff. Then John ends up kidnapping him and stealing him and puts him in this chair, and it's like his first trap, kind of. Like, he has his hands that are bleeding, and then he has his face that they have like knives like this. So he has to push his face through the knives like this in order for the whole chair to like collapse and he falls out of the trap. Like, otherwise he's going to bleed to death from the wounds on his hands and his legs, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, his legs have spikes on them too, or knives. So he's screwed if he doesn't do this, which, let's see if he does. So John's philosophy wasn't off to a good start right from the beginning. Because Cecil pushes his face through and it breaks the chair and everything. He gets out of it, and he gets up and he just says, "Oh, I'm gonna fucking kill you." And he goes to attack John, and John just like moves to the side and he falls into some thing like container that has a whole bunch of barbed wire in it. And he just ends up killing himself. And so Cecil's gone. Then we're back to the original flashback with John, who was telling this story, and he ends up taking that clock that they showed earlier in the movie in one of the flashbacks with the 300-year-old ticking mechanism that's still ticking to this day. He takes and smashes that and stuff, and they have a big fight and they leave. And now we're back 2 layers of Inception up, back to the present day with Strom in the interrogation room talking to Jill. And then Strom ends up figuring it out. He picks the pictures up that he took off of his office or whatever, one of the walls in the police station. He leaves the interrogation room with Jill in it. Then he looks at the picture and turns back around, and he says, Gideon, John's son, your guys' son, was the name of his first building, right? And it's Gideon Meatpacking. And he says, where is it? And then, again, the person who edits these movies has such an amazingly hard job. Because just him saying, where is it? Where is it? Where? And he's smacking the wall. It says like 6 times, and it's edited all different fucking angles. Like, it's got to be one hell of a job doing that and being able to edit these films. But seems like she ends up telling him, because now we see Eric Matthews and Hoffman and Art Blank, and Art's looking up, and Matthews is looking up, and he sees the chains with the 2 big ass blocks of ice that are held like this, and it does not look good for what could happen to Matthews. And he flat out says, you better hope that he doesn't come through that door. And of course that's going to intrigue anybody. Like, Matthews is like, who's coming through that door? And we know Rig, he just can't not go through a fucking door that's not secured. I did, however, notice that Strom just like walked into one of the doors here to the Gideon meatpacking plant where all of this is going down, meaning Jeff's game from the last movie and Lynn and Jigsaw and Amanda are all somewhere here, and Riggs' end part of the game that Riggs is going around. Now, Riggs just passed a box that was empty because that was a box that Jeff, I believe the gun is what he took out of that. And Strom comes into the from outside into the door, and 10 seconds later passes that same red box. So was that door open the whole time? Because Jeff could have just left, right? Like, I don't know. Like, now I feel like I gotta rewind to see if there was a lock on that door. Because there's no lock on that door. There's not. I just looked. So there's no lock on that door and it opens. So I'm guessing Rig went through the same way, right? So they were able to get from outside through an unlocked door to the inside of this place. But Jeff never, he just gave up with doors, like trying them. That's weird. I never noticed that. Like, wouldn't you want every door in your torture house, like, completely locked and sealed so no one can get out or no one can get in? I don't know. I just noticed that. That's kind of weird. And Riggs sees the badges of Detective Matthews and Detective Hoffman, and it says on a piece of paper, "Have you truly learned how to save a life?" No, is the answer. Rig has not. Then, right before the door opens and stuff, where Rig comes through the door, we see Art take his jacket off, and we see the device that's hooked onto his neck. So he has no choice in doing this. Here's Jeff. We got Jeff. We got Rig. We got Strom. They're all going their own different directions here. So we hear Amanda say, "Fucking fix me," and then we hear Jeff. We see Jeff and hear him say, "Lynn." And she gets shot and falls in his arms. Then Strom is coming around and hears the other gunshot, so he hears the commotion going on there. And with 10 seconds or less left on the clock, man, Rig comes running through that door after hearing Matthew's voice. And even Matthew tries shooting at him. Shoots him in the shoulder. And nothing. And he breaks through the door, and then the way that the two things just of ice blocks just come down, it's fucking explode his face apart. His whole head smashed to pieces by the ice. Looks awesome. Like, I love that whole death. Like, it sucks, man, what Matthews has been through. Like, he still doesn't know what happened to his son. Like, he's assuming he's all right, but he hasn't seen him in 6 months. He had to bash apart his own foot and then have it cut off, it seems like, just to be able to wait 6 months in some shitty ass living condition in order to be part of this game, and then have your head smashed apart with 2 blocks of ice. Doesn't sound like a fun 6-month party to me. Rig also shoots Art, by the way. And the water rushes under Hoffman's chair, but no electricity is there. So the bad guy is nor here nor there. He's right there. Hoffman is the bad guy. He's working with Jigsaw. He's the accomplice. Dun dun dun. Now, Jeff had the gun in his hand at the end of the last movie. I know it didn't take place like this, because I mean Strom wasn't there, obviously, but he ends up saying, like, "Where's my daughter, Jeff?" and points it at Strom, and pointing a gun at fucking FBI agent with dead people in the room and stuff. He pulls his gun, he fucking shoots Jeff a few times, shoots him dead. So they were all dead except Strom. Then right before Art's brains splatter on the floor after Riggs shoots him in the head, he still happens to be able to push that play button on this cassette player he throws over to him. Which, speaking of that, he's reaching for the cassette player, Art, so Rig can listen to it, saying, because he's screaming, they're screaming at each other, and Rig is saying, you did this, you did, and Art saying, no, like, you're Jigsaw, he's testing you, you motherfucker. And then he's trying to grab for the cassette tape, and Rig is thinking he's grabbing for a gun or something. He's like, yo, let me see your hands, let me see your hands. And then he goes to shoot him, and that's when he throws the cassette tape, or has the cassette tape in his hand, gets shot, brains hit the ground as it pushes play. Why not just say, Jigsaw's testing you, hold on, let me grab this cassette tape and it'll show you, and like let you listen to it. Like, you could say anything, but he doesn't say anything like that. But I mean, come on, he could have said something. He had enough strength to argue and everything. He's already been shot in the shoulder before this, but he was able to talk fine. He was able to yell and argue, so I don't know why. But then the tape plays and the music, ding 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 ding. Oh, goosebumps, baby, how it flows. Usually I never interrupt the tape ending and stuff, like the revelations, but I love the way that Jon delivers the lines. If that is Jon who did the tape, I'm pretty sure it is, because I mean, there's no reason for Hoffman to do it, because he was still alive, Jon, until literally just now in both movies. But I love when he says, hello, Officer Rig. Like, if you are hearing this and stuff, and you see Detective Matthews, it means that you've reached Detective Matthews and Detective Hoffman in under 90 minutes, which resulting in their deaths. Like, you've been warned. The rules were clear. I love the way he delivers those lines. It sounds so good, and like Riggs's failure just like really hits you when he delivers those lines, Jon, on the tape. Awesome stuff. Then Rigg turns around, sees Hoffman standing there because he got out of the his fake electrified chair, standing there looking like a badass that Hoffman is. Ah, okay, so Hoffman did kidnap Rigg to start his game. Because I was saying it was Amanda, because this takes place, during the same time as 3. So at the beginning, it could have been her kidnapping Lynn and Rigg. But they show in a tiny, tiny little blink and you miss it scene, cut during like the whole tape part, which is just cuts everywhere. And they show Hoffman say to Rigg, why don't you go from the beginning of the movie when they're at Carrie's crime scene, when they find Carrie's ripped apart body, and he says to Rigg, why don't you go home? You have some off days or something. The next shot, is him, Hoffman. You see his face, the side of his face, but I paused it. It's him picking up the pig mask. And then the next scene is in Rigg's apartment when he gets kidnapped. And then right before that, they show Amanda kidnapping Lynn. So she kidnapped Lynn, and Hoffman did kidnap Rigg here. So that's something I never noticed. So we do have confirmation from earlier. My question: Amanda didn't do it. My man Hoffman did it. He took Rigg. So yeah, so Jeff is shot dead by Strom. Riggs is bleeding out in the room with the computers that Matthews and Hoffman were in. Hoffman reveals himself, and he just leaves and says game over. He doesn't shut the door. Why does he leave Riggs alive? Rigg, whatever, hour and 40 minutes in, doesn't matter what his name is at this point. Rigg, why does he take the chance? I mean, I'm sure he looks like he's going to die any in a few minutes. Like, he's bleeding out heavily. But why even take that risk? Like, why? Why not just put a bullet in him? I mean, I don't get that. But whatever. Then Strom gets locked in the room with, Jigsaw's body and Amanda and Jeff that you just killed, and gets that locked on him by Hoffman. Then we just hear the rest of the videotape from the very beginning that Hoffman's listening to during the autopsy, and saying that just because I'm dead, the games have just begun. And that's Saw 4, guys, from 2006. 2007, I want to say, right? Yes, 2007. Almost got that wrong. An hour and 40 minutes on Saw 4. Well, that makes kind of sense. I mean, because like I said, this one is very heavy on the information. Like, real heavy on it. This is the film that I consider the bridge gap between 1 through 3 and 5 through 7. Like, this is the information overload that connects the first trilogy and the films to come. So there is a lot to talk about with this movie. But I have 20 minutes. Yeah, that's not enough for a movie. Unless it's a short or something. But I have time to upload this probably. Have with Gareth, my G-Man at Video Tasties, we have our Sunday night show, or Sunday morning show that we usually have. We are having it in 20 minutes today on Saturday morning, just for this week. I don't know why. Gareth asked if we can do it this morning instead of tomorrow morning. I said sure. So it's our horror news from across the pond, where the United States guy right here, and the Brit over there, over there where he's from. But yeah, horror news from across the pond with a cup of Joe, and me and Gareth. So I doubt anyone will see this by the time, because I'll be live with him already, and this won't be uploaded by then. But yeah, that's going to be fun. And for those who actually watched all of this and don't know, I am going to have the actress who plays Megan in the movie Megan, Amy McDonald, not McDonald, Amy Donald. I got to make sure I don't say that to her. Like, say, hey, here's Amy McDonald. Because, I don't know, I just think of McDonald's. But Amy Donald, she's going to be on the channel on Monday for an interview and a little chat about the movie and how she got involved with it, and all her best times with it, and how it was like working with James Wan and all that type of stuff. I'm going to go down the gamut of questions, so if anyone wants to come into the chat with questions who've seen the movie, feel free to come with questions, because I'll be checking the chat and asking her whatever chat does. So that's going to be fun to look forward to. That's Monday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So wherever you guys are from, hope you're having a great morning, afternoon, or night. And I will talk to you in a little bit on horror news from across the pond. And then I will be doing Saw 5 and have Saw 5 video out probably around 9-10 in the morning. All right, guys, take care. And I'll see you and talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye, guys.